My father didn't lower his tone when he said it. He projected it like he was making a declaration carved in stone. Give your penthouse to your brother. It was meant to be part of his elegant wedding toast, yet the entire ballroom froze on cue. The musicians fumbled so hard the violin let out a sharp squeak. 200 elegantly dressed guests watched as my father's palm connected with my cheek, the sound slicing through the air. Champagne flutes paused mid-motion, conversations died instantly, and heat rushed across my face in a violent bloom. My mother leaned toward me, her whisper slicing deeper than the slap ever could. You've embarrassed us. I simply smiled, cool, steady, unbothered. In that moment, they didn't understand that they hadn't just struck their daughter. They'd awakened their biggest miscalculation. Before I tell you what happened after that night, hit like and comment where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever had to stand alone against the very people who were supposed to protect you. Everyone loved to say my family looked flawless from the outside, and maybe we did, if you didn't look too closely. A father with expensive suits and a grip meant to impress strangers. A mother who never raised her voice and treated reputation like religion. A son who was adored even when he failed spectacularly. And me, the daughter who built her own future, yet never quite fit their curated picture. My name is Diana Brooks, 31 years old, a senior software architect who clawed her way up without a single coin from family, without connections, without shortcuts, just long nights, algorithms, endless coffee, and determination sharpened by years of being underestimated. Meanwhile, my brother Carlos burned through business ideas the way some people burn through matches, quickly and carelessly. And every time he hit rock bottom, my parents wired him money, praised his vision, and defended him like he was some misunderstood genius. When I worked overtime to pay for rent, my father had the nerve to say, "That's how character is built." He adored talking about character, as if endurance could replace affection. I walked out of that house at 20 with a vow carved into my bones, never ask them for anything again. And I didn't. I lived in a cramped studio with walls thin enough to hear neighbors breathe, typing until my fingers ached, living on instant noodles while Carlos posted vacations from islands I couldn't afford to pronounce. Still, when I bought my penthouse, the one achievement that made every sleepless night worthwhile, my parents barely blinked. My father only commented, "It's too much space for one person." I didn't know then that he wasn't giving an opinion. He was hinting at the plan they already had. Carlos was always the future. They clung to this fantasy of his potential, even as he drowned in loans and bad decisions. Every family dinner turned into a brainstorming session about how to rescue him next. My mother, Helen, mastered weaponized sweetness. She'd smile and say, "You've always been so hardworking, dear. Maybe you could help your brother get settled." Help meant sacrifice. Sacrifice meant me. So when Carlos introduced his fiancée, Vanessa, a polished woman with an influencer grin and eyes that scanned rooms for price tags faster than faces, I tried to play along. I attended the engagement events, smiled for group photos, even wrote a thoughtful toast. A part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, they'd treat me like family for once, rather than the family's emergency bank account. The wedding was everything they dreamed of. Expensive chandeliers, champagne waterfalls, a string quartet, photographers stationed like snipers. The Brooks name sparkled again, and as I stood near the dance floor, swirling my drink, I noticed my father watching me, assessing, plotting. Then he lifted his champagne glass and spoke the words that shattered everything. The morning after the wedding, my cheek still pulsed with the outline of his hand. I stood by the window of my penthouse watching the city move as if last night hadn't happened. Cars honked, people rushed to work, rain streaked the glass. But inside me, something old and heavy cracked. My phone kept lighting up, messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, each one wrapped in judgment disguised as concern. "You shouldn't have challenged him. He's still your father. Be mature, Diana." Not one message acknowledged the slap. Not one asked if I was all right. Then Carlos texted, "You ruined everything. Vanessa is furious. Mom says you owe Dad an apology." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I blocked him. For a few days, I enjoyed the silence. Then the knocking started. On Thursday morning, I opened my door to find Carlos and Vanessa posing in my doorway like they'd walked out of an advertisement for nerve and entitlement. Vanessa held a measuring tape. Carlos casually sipped his latte. "We just need some measurements," he said. "For what?" I asked, even though dread already pressed into my stomach. "For our furniture," Vanessa answered breezily. "We're moving in after the honeymoon. Your mom said you agreed." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Get out." Carlos sighed dramatically. "Don't make this harder. You're single. You don't need all this space." The rage that rose in my chest was hotter than the slap had ever been. "You need to leave, now." I shut the door in their faces. The final click of the lock sounded like justice. By evening, I got a notification. New group chat. Diana's Penthouse transfer. 12 members. The first message was a picture of paint samples. The next from my mother. Carlos and Vanessa moving date confirmed. 2 weeks. I stared at the screen so long the room began to blur. Then I typed, "This isn't happening." Seconds later, my father called. His voice boomed through the phone, dripping with venom. "You ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for you." I asked quietly, "Like what? What exactly have you done for me?" He had no answer. He hung up. That night, I sat in the dark, sipping water, watching the city glitter, like a world completely separate from the one I grew up in. I thought about every time I'd bent backward, every moment I'd swallowed hurt, every time I mistook their control for care, and an ugly, liberating truth settled into me. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted possession. Sunday arrived, and out of habit, or maybe to confirm what I already knew, I went to their weekly dinner. Everything smelled the same: garlic, lemon, furniture polish, control. My mother smiled as if the world was perfect. My father ignored me until halfway through the meal, then slammed his hand on the table so hard the plates rattled. "Enough. Carlos gets your penthouse next weekend, or you're no longer part of this family." My mother murmured, "It's for everyone's good." Carlos leaned back with a satisfied grin. I folded my napkin, placed it neatly beside my untouched plate, and stood. "Then consider this my last meal here." No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. Outside, the air felt sharp, cold, and cleansing. I drove home with no music, no tears. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was freedom. I barely slept that night. The slap, the insults, the years of compliance, all of it played like static. But sometime between midnight and the first hint of dawn, my fury solidified into direction. If they wanted to take what I'd built, then I'd show them exactly what that cost. At 7 a.m., I called Jasmine, my best friend and my attorney. "It's time," I said. "For what?" she asked. "For me to stop acting like the quiet, obedient daughter." By noon, we sat in her office, untouched coffee between us. I emptied my digital life on her desk. Screenshots, voice recordings, texts, every manipulation and threat they'd ever thrown at me. Jasmine reviewed everything, her expression hardening. "This is harassment," she said. "You could file for a restraining order." "Not yet," I replied, "but I will." Next, I met with Marcus, my closest ally at work, the one who had witnessed my family meltdown at the wedding. We sat in a small cafe, rain misting the windows. "You were right," he said before I even pulled out my chair. "Carlos is bragging at work. He told HR he's moving into your penthouse." My stomach twisted. Marcus continued, "He's been dropping your name to get a promotion, and he has no idea you own a chunk of Westview through your holding company." That one sentence shifted the entire landscape. My brother worked at a company I quietly helped build. He strutted around believing we were equals, when in truth, I owned 30% of the place. "Good," I said, feeling something cold and powerful settle inside me. Let him keep talking. The next day, I contacted my building's head of security, a man named Reynolds, who owed me a favor. Within hours, he sent me footage Carlos and Vanessa trying to enter my penthouse while I was out. Vanessa even posed for a selfie by the door, tagging the location as future home. Jasmine nearly laughed when I showed her. "They're making your case for you." "Exactly," I said. "I'm done reacting. It's my turn to move first." That night, I created 3 folders on my computer: legal, financial, evidence. Each one filled quickly. Recordings, letters, screenshots, bank transfers. Every lie they told became a receipt. Every guilt trip became a weapon. By Friday, Jasmine had drafted cease and desist papers and a preliminary restraining order. Marcus pulled financial records showing I'd covered loans my father never repaid. Every document drew a clearer picture. They'd used me for years, and I'd let them, until now. When Jasmine asked what came next, I didn't hesitate. "Invite them here. All of them. They want a family meeting? They'll get one." Her eyebrows rose. "You sure you're ready for that?" "I've been ready my whole life." Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. I looked out at the city from my glass walls, buildings glowing against the storm, the world I'd built without their help, and felt something settle inside me. Calm. Absolute. "They thought I'd break," I said quietly, "but I was just getting started." Friday came with rain, the kind that blurred the skyline and made the whole city hum. I wore a white blouse, black slacks, hair pulled low, calm, controlled, unshakable. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw umbrellas, formal coats, and familiar faces already set in scorn. My father stood front and center with a manila envelope. My mother clutched paint swatches, like this was still about decor. Carlos, smug as ever, held his phone, probably recording his victory. I opened the door and stepped aside. "Come in." They filed through the hall, shaking off rain, murmuring about the view. My father looked around, nodding. "You've done well for yourself," he said. "Now it's time to do right by your family." "Funny," I said. "I thought right and wrong were the same for everyone." I gestured toward the dining area. 4 people waited behind me: Jasmine, Marcus, my financial advisor, and Reynolds, head of security. They looked sharp, quiet, professional. The atmosphere changed. My father's smile vanished. "What is this?" "A family meeting," I said. "You wanted one." My mother's voice turned sugar-sweet. "Diana, we didn't mean for things to get ugly. Just sign the transfer papers so we can move forward." "Of course," I replied, handing her a blue folder. "Start by reading this." They opened it. Pages of ownership documents, deeds, corporate filings. My father frowned. "What is this nonsense?" "Proof," I said evenly, "that this isn't just my penthouse. I own the building, and 30% of Westview, the company that employs your son." Carlos froze, his expression flickering from arrogance to panic. "You're lying." Marcus stepped forward. "Not lying. Confirmed through SEC filings and HR records. She's your boss's boss." The color drained from my brother's face. My father's fists tightened. "You think this scares me?" Jasmine pressed play on her phone. The room filled with my father's recorded voice, his shouting, his threats, my mother's cold commands, every syllable sharp and undeniable. "This recording," Jasmine said, "is already filed with the court, along with a restraining order." My mother's lips trembled. "You wouldn't do that to your own family." "You did it to yourselves," I answered. For a moment, the only sound was the rain. I watched them, all 3 of them, realized the power balance had shifted forever. Carlos lunged forward, face twisted. "You think you're better than us?" Reynolds stepped in front of me. "Sir, I'd suggest you leave." I didn't flinch. I looked at my father. "You called me ungrateful, but I paid your mortgage, your debts, and your son's tuition. You drained me dry and still called it love." He swallowed hard. "We're family." "No," I said quietly. "We're a pattern I just broke." I opened the door. "You'll all leave now. If you contact me again, everything in those folders becomes public. Carlos, your company will know the full story. Mom, your friends will know what you did. Dad, your reputation will vanish faster than you can rebuild it." My mother's mascara streaked. My father's shoulders slumped. Carlos glared, but the fight was gone. One by one, they walked out into the rain. Vanessa lingered at the doorway, eyes soft. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I'm sorry." I nodded once, then, "Start being different." When the elevator doors closed, I stood still, breathing in the sound of thunder rolling over glass. Jasmine touched my arm. "You okay?" "I'm finally fine," I said. We watched the rain streak down the windows, washing away the last traces of them. The storm outside was loud, but inside it was silent. Clean, earned mine. They thought they could control me. They didn't realize they just taught me how to win. The next morning, the city gleamed like it had been scrubbed clean overnight. I woke up to sunlight instead of tension, quiet instead of chaos. My phone lay face down on the counter. No calls, no guilt, no manipulation waiting behind a glowing screen. Jasmine called around noon. Restraining orders approved, she said. They can't come near you or contact you anymore. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Then I guess it's finally over. It's over, she confirmed. News traveled fast. By midweek, Carlos had been terminated. HR discovered he'd falsified records, used my name, and shared confidential information. Marcus texted, "He's out for good." My parents stayed silent, but their absence felt lighter than any apology ever could. I spent that evening boxing up the last remnants of them, old photos, inherited trinkets, the illusion that I ever needed their approval. When the boxes were sealed, the apartment felt larger, brighter, like it had exhaled with me. A week later, I signed documents creating a scholarship for women in tech without family support. The check wasn't charity, it was closure. Turning my pain into something that could outlast their cruelty felt like the only justice that mattered. That night, I stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the skyline shimmer against the fading storm clouds. For years, I'd fought to be seen. Now I realized I didn't need their eyes on me at all. The city looked alive, new, untouched, and so was I. I used to believe family meant loyalty, no matter the cost, but real loyalty doesn't demand your silence or your soul. It respects your boundaries. I didn't lose a family that night. I lost a prison built out of guilt. Now, every sunrise hitting these glass walls reminds me peace isn't given, it's earned. If you've ever had to stand alone against people who were supposed to love, you know this. You're not weak for walking away. You're brave for saving yourself. Hit like, share your story in the comments, and subscribe for more like this.